first time you're going to get not graded on careers as you go through this, but it's really important that you understand and know that going through this boot camp is not just about learning coding. When you're done with it, the employers want us to tell them who to hire. And while we'd like to tell them all of you, there's inevitably a couple of people who have griped their entire way through it, who have missed meetings and not apologized, who have had a poor attitude. And can we go ahead and put ourselves out there and say, yeah, we recommend this person, they went through the camp? No. So it's important there first and foremost to talk about, it's not just about your resume, and it's not just about what you say on there or how you say it, or even how you interview. If you take a bad attitude all the way through this program, you're going to take that right into your interviews. So I'm here to kind of give you the heads up that this is hard. You're going to hear it over and over again, and you're not going to believe how hard it really is when it gets really hard. But you need to remember that it's an opportunity, and you get to do it. You don't have to do it. You get to. If you can't get a hold of your TAs, or you can't get a hold of someone, instead of complaining about that, you got to be resourceful. You've got to be responsible. You figure out what you need to fix that. Because guess what? When you get hired, there are going to be problems that you got to solve. No one's going to be there to help you. So that's your new job. Coding is all about problem solving, figuring stuff out on your own. And I can't get this to do this thing that I wanted to do over and over and over. And how do I figure it out? So while you're going through boot camp and things aren't going the way you want them to, that's part of the learning process. How do I figure it out? There are 18 or so other of you to lean on. And then there are mentors. There's myself. You can contact somebody and just say, Max, I'm tired of talking to you. Who else can I talk to? And there's plenty of other people that we can direct you to. So really, I'm just here to bookend the program, give you the heads up of what we're going to be looking for. Because like I said, this is the first time that I'm going to weigh in on your, what I'm calling employability. So yeah, you're coding. Yeah, you're good at this. Some of you are going to be natural. Some of you are going to struggle while you figure it out. But then I'm going to chime in and say, cool, that's awesome. But I'm not seeing engagement. I'm seeing a poor attitude. And I'm here to tell you, I want permission. I want everyone to understand. I'm also here to be real with you. If I think your poor attitude is going to stop you from getting hired, I want to be able to tell you. And not having had this kind of upfront conversation in the past when we talk, we get to a point where it's like, I'm not comfortable saying what I need to say. But I want to let you all know that's what I'm here for. Because I'm going to tell you, you're great at coding, but we need to work on this other thing. Everybody good with that?
Yes.
Okay. And know that whatever it is, I mean it in all of the best interest and effort for you. Yes, Karen. Do I need to do the module this time? I do all of the things. So we had gone from in cohort 2, well, cohort 1, no careers stuff at all. So they graduated and had to figure all of it out on their own. Cohort 2, we tried to make them do too much. That was okay, too much. Last cohort, we tried to back off, and I think we backed off too much. So hopefully this is the Goldilocks situation where this is just enough to get you what you need. And like you said, or like I said, when you get off the roller coaster at the end, you know which ride you want to go on to next, or at least have an idea that I don't want to go on those rides. I'm headed for this direction. So we have an agreement that you've signed, and that is that you are going to take the guidance. You're not going to say, but somebody else told me I only need a 1-page or 2-page resume, or I can have a 2-page resume. We're going to tell you you need a 1-page resume. And you're going to say, okay, I'm listening to you. And then you're also agreeing to be open and communicate. If you have questions, you have a problem. If it's personal, you have Jason, and Jason is an amazing human being to talk about. Anything you have going on at home. If you have any fears about what to do with your career, or just wondering like, what can I apply for? Or I really like, we had a guest speaker and I loved what they talked about. How can I learn more? I can help you with that. And then you're also agreeing that if you do have any issues, you will tell us and help us figure that out for you. So some of the things that we are going to be specifically looking for. So when I'm doing your employability, I'm looking for attitude. Are you problem solving things well? And I'm probably going to ask Jason, what do you think about people's attitude in general? That doesn't mean you can't have bad days. we all have bad days and they're even worse when you're super stressed out. But how do you handle those issues and, how do you approach it? Shantine was a shining example of like, things got hard and she ended up not having to be able to do cohort 2, came back to cohort 3 and just rocked it with a smile the entire time. So I'm happy to promote her anywhere she's trying to go, because that kind of spirit and get it done no matter how long it takes, I would love to have on my team. Calendars and meetings. You're going to be so overwhelmed. Start being organized now. Work on your file naming convention so you can find things. Be using your calendar. Have a note-taking system. Everything you can do to be organized from the beginning is going to help you. But when you have a meeting scheduled with Max and you forget about it, that's okay. But you need to tell Max, I forgot about it. You don't just ghost him and let him, well, there goes my 20 minutes or whatever that was going to be. So you need to respect other people's time, and it's perfectly okay. You don't have to be embarrassed about it or anything. It's perfectly normal also, so much stuff to do, but you do need to respect the other person's time. And that's the same for interviewing or anything else. Yes, you want to leave early, make sure you get somewhere on time, but if you're running late and you can at least let them know, you still have a shot. But so many people are either afraid to say, or they just don't do anything or whatever, blame everything else in the world for not having that meeting, but you still need to respect the other person's time. So that's another thing that we'll be looking for is, plus, 3-4 times, then we're looking at what's wrong with because you can't say skill organized and have missed 6 meetings max. So those are things, and if you have that problem, then we can work with me or Jason to figure out what's going on in your life that you need to be able to be more organized and get to places on time. Email etiquette and messaging. So that's another thing. I'm going to be looking for your participation. I'm going to be looking for how you talk to people, even in messaging, supportive. And this is there's a clear direct path or correlation between the people who have been super supportive of everyone else in their group and their success. So you will hear about Larry and you will hear about Latonia because they were super rock stars, and the whole time they rock starred their way through the program, they liked and shared and commented on everybody else's stuff. They still took the time to help and to be there for everyone else. Let me tell you, Latonia was going through hell during that time, and she still did that. And that says a lot about her character, and that's what employability is. I want those kind of people on my team, and that's the kind of person I'm going to recommend to somebody else to hire. But in your emails, hi, Max. Good morning, Karen. Not, I need this. Like I shared a real example in Slack yesterday of somebody I'm looking for hiring a job right now. And someone about an hour after they submitted an application said, I want to know what's going on with my application. Well, guess what? Rejected. But I know you're busy, you forget to do that stuff, but it shows. So when and you have to get in the habit too, so that you don't accidentally do that to a potential employer, because every single person you meet is a potential employer. Max is a potential employer. Karen could be a potential reference. Everyone you meet might know somebody who might hire you, and they're all going to be looking for how employable are you, and do I feel comfortable giving you a referral? And that's kind of stuff they're looking at. So even when you're sending an email that just is a small sentence, I start every email with, hope you're having a great day, hope you had a great weekend, thank you for something, a little nugget of gratitude, and then my subject. And that's really important too later on down the line when you get to like actually submitting your resume to somebody or requesting a mentor meeting. You don't want to approach Latonia and say, hi, Latonia, Max said we could have a mentor meeting. Hi, Latonia, I've heard great things about you. I would love to meet with you. I think you can help me. Here's my schedule, be helpful. All of that stuff is what I want to see in an employee in your careers. And that all plays back to your attitude. Are you grateful for this opportunity? Are you just grateful for random things throughout the day? That doesn't only help us understand if you're employable, but it also just helps you and your mental health as you go through this, because it's gonna get tough. That goes back to complaining. When you fill the work, this is just in general advice. When you have a habit of complaining, you're just taking up space that could be used for something else more positive. So, and we all do it. I do it all the time. I'm still always fighting my own urges to complain about stuff. So there's going to be stuff to complain about here. this isn't perfect, and you can see every iteration we try to make it better, but all these different programs, all those things you're working with, they're not gonna work right. Logins aren't gonna be correct. We can't give you all the information that you need for everything all the time. Again, figure it out yourself, but also, what's my point, Max? Complaining about it doesn't help you solve the problem. So instead of that, recognize that you're about to complain about something and then figure out how can I, this is one of my favorite things from the book, The Power of Now. Change it, leave it, or accept it. And the way that you can accept it here is to accept it. If you want to change it, we have all kinds of forms where you can put in feedback. Latonia was the queen of sending in, you need to fix this, needs to be that, but she also offered solutions. Highly employable when you offer solutions. We're going to be finding mentors for you. I would recommend, this is one of the things the way that this is structured now is I'm just here talking to you now. You see me, we're gonna have some one-on-ones. I'm gonna try to have a one-on-one, I'm going to have a one-on-one with every single one of you to talk about what your career goals are, what your strengths and weaknesses are from your jobs in the past. Organization, we can work on that. And you're going to be needing to find other people to talk to. You see Max every day, you see your TAs, you're gonna have to get out of your comfort zone and start talking to other people. And so if you had a guest speaker that you're like, cool, I like their job and I want to talk to them. Mentors also doesn't have to be long-term. It doesn't have to be even more than one meeting. Just talk to someone. Hi.
Hi, sorry.
Come on in. I'm just filling everyone in on our career coaching timeline, essentially at this point. So we are going to be just having this as you go through the modules that talk about LinkedIn, networking, resume, everything, searching for jobs. They're all already on YouTube from Cohort 1. You're encouraged. I'll show you where the resources are. They're already there, so you can watch them at your own pace. If you never get to them, so this happened last cohort. Even at your own pace, some of you will be so focused on struggling with the coding, you won't ever get to this. So we are putting an entire week of career coaching. So I'm going to come back the last week of class and do nothing but the career coaching. But like I said, I still encourage you to have mentor conversations, keep an eye out when you have guest speakers or reading articles and trying to figure out what kind of jobs are interesting to you. So you don't get to last week and you don't have any idea. We'll work on it, but it would be nice if you get to that point and you have some stuff. I'm available to you still. So we're going to have our one-on-ones so we can meet. What I have found is there are a handful of people who want to take advantage of, because some of you might want a job like tomorrow, you know, if you have the capacity for it. And if you can get one that's aligned, might not be actually coding, but if it's aligned in the direction of where you want to go. We've had people who've gotten their foot at the door doing marketing at a coding company, so that when they're finished, they can move on to do something else. So I'm going to be here for you, and I'm going to be posting and sharing articles and information in a career coaching channel on Slack. So make sure that you are subscribed to that. I'm going to invite you to it. But I talked to somebody after cohort 3 who still hadn't joined it after an entire 6 months of information and articles and all of that. So you're going to want to make sure you're subscribed, because also events will be there. Lemoyne just had a career fair last week. That kind of stuff is going to be in there, how to prepare for those career fairs and stuff like that. So that's basically the flow of that. So in Canvas, if you want to navigate through.
Did you pull it over to the
I did.
Okay, perfect.
So we're still migrating stuff over into Word in Canvas. Actually, if you just go to pages and then there's
Oh, I need to make that public for them.
So career coach, all the stuff that I'm telling you is all in here. Modules are there, the link to the YouTube videos. If you scroll down, there's a link to resources, and then here's the dates. If you want to, and you're able to follow along with the modules and go through career coaching stuff, this is the pace that I recommend. And it says module 1 and 2 quiz due. The quiz just lets me know that you did it. So the quiz is just like 5 super easy questions that are like, yeah, you actually watched it. And then I know that you did it. So I keep track of that, super easy. That's also in Notion in the handbook as well. So like I said, your first assignment for me, the only one you have right now is sometime in the next week, schedule time with me to have, it's just like a 20-minute one-on-one, so we can talk about you and your interest in your background and what you'd like to do.
What if you don't have any jobs whatsoever? Because you're gonna pay and mom.
That's okay, we'll talk about it.
This is, I'm like, whoa, okay, the coding is gonna be intimidating, now I'm really gonna push
Yeah.
outside your comfort. zone.
Yeah, no worries, that's what I'm here for. Yeah, Laura. Thanks, Laura Thorne, not related to Karen Thorne. It's not that I'm aware of. But yes, but that speaks to another topic that I had on here. I'm here also to help you with your imposter syndrome. Okay, because that's probably like everyone's biggest problem. That's a great here to mention. Does anyone else have any fears? Like looking forward that they have today. Hers was I don't have any work experience. So any other fears about doing all this career stuff or getting to that point?
Like, I believe, like, my biggest thing was, I was already taking like the coding, basic program course through EOC, and I went through it myself. So did I learn or did I learn it properly, or did I actually do the right stuff? So
Yeah.
that's why I was more interested in working with somebody to be able to figure out if the information that I learned or the information that I'm getting is the information is
Okay.
correct.
Okay, so that's a good point. That's another, there's several different sources of imposter syndrome. But one of them is, do I really know what I'm talking about? And you all have different experiences, backgrounds, and strengths that you bring to the table. So you can't compare yourself to each other. You have a Latonia in the room. One of you or two of you will shine up as that person. You can't compare yourself to them. Everyone has different organization skills, a different background that they came from, different natural ability. I know that I could code circles around some people do, but I can't do math. So, you know, we all have our own things. And then we all have our own interests. I can code, but I don't. So, it's okay. You're gonna come to the table as you. I encourage all of you to be yourselves, to be the best organized, respectful, positive person that you can be. And that too will help with imposter syndrome. Know that when you go to an opportunity, if it doesn't fit, they're not the right company, it's just not the right one. Another one will come along, you know? So I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to apply for a job and feel like I have to have this job. You don't. There's other jobs. There's other opportunities. You all have a chance to, so that the agreement with Careers and Codes that you work for 2 years in Syracuse, but that doesn't mean the company you work for has to be in Syracuse. So you can work remote. There's more opportunities than you may be thinking there is also. And again, I can help you find those once we kind of figure out what direction it is that you want. But yes, imposter syndrome is real. It's completely understandable. And I think just knowing that also makes it easier to overcome. It's really a personal challenge. The term was not even identified until like 1985 or something like that. And of course, since then it's skyrocketed because it's like everyone thinks they have it. It's just self-doubt and it's natural. We all want to fit in and belong, and it's scary for people to not accept us. So it's a natural thing. But if you are feeling like you're really struggling with it, that's another thing we talk about. Aside from that, I think I gotta turn it back over to Max, but yes.
What are your hours?
Oh, good question. So I do Careers and Code part-time, but I also have a publishing company and working on a TV show and business consulting, so all over the place. But I will fit you in. So I have a calendar link. I put it in the slide. Thank you. If you don't see a time on there that works for you, or it's not for like 2 months, just message me on Slack and we'll find a time that fits you. Because it'll just be 30 minutes. I can fit it in wherever. So, so yeah, my schedule's a bit weird. And so the last 3 things are 3 R's that I think anyone can be successful with. These 3 R's: be reliable, be responsive. And that means we're looking for on Slack. Again, if you Max post, hey, tomorrow we have the time to do or change of location, just give them a thumbs up. It just says, hey, someone heard me. The last cohort, crickets, it's so frustrating on our end. Like, did everybody get the message? Does anybody care? So, you know, just those little things, that takes a second. And again, employable. If I'm hiring you, I want you to be engaging and interacting, so it's a habit you might as well get into now. And then the last one is resourceful. If you can't find something, you can't do something, at least try it yourself first. And then hit up a TA or instructor or whatever. Because again, on the job, that's what they're gonna expect and what will they will see. Any other questions about career coaching stuff? Again, I'm gonna meet with everyone of you, so.
If you said a meeting is obviously online.
Yes. I'm flexible though, if anybody wants me in person, we're back in that world, I'm happy to do also, if I can. Did I forget anything?
No. If you don't know what imposter syndrome is, don't worry, there is a reading coming. I will go over that in a second.
Okay. Back to you
Awesome.
then.
Thanks so much, Laura, for coming
Good
in.
luck, everybody.
And that's a great question. So after this week, we'll be going fully virtual until almost the end of the boot camp. With that said, at the end of this week, sorry, you probably can't hear me well. At the end of this week, we will be posting a survey to see who would prefer in-person classes. If you're interested in a co-working membership to be able to attend class that way. We have been very flexible, right? So the first cohort was fully in person in a room just like this. Second cohort, middle of the pandemic, fully virtual. We learned fast out of necessity how to teach on Zoom, right? Third cohort, we started off the first month or two virtual. Then we did couple every other week in person, and we just got to the point where there were like there's 2 or 3 people who wanted to be in person and everyone else who wanted to be fully remote. And so we're kind of leaning into the remote forward nature of it, but at the same time recognizing that some people may prefer to be in person, get out of their house, have a different workspace, all of that kind of stuff. So we'll be posting a survey at the end of the week. It will be a quick like 3-minute thing you can fill out. And then based off of those responses, we can look into co-working spaces or working with Lemoyne to continue to get classroom space or stuff like that. With that said, office hours will be at 5 p.m. on Sunday. Office hours are totally optional. We don't even take attendance at office hours. So that is your chance to show up and ask questions. I will be at the, it's called the Alumni House on campus. It's right on the other side of the parking lot where you parked. I will be in person there at 5 o'clock, but we'll also be firing up the Zoom link. So if you want to attend office hours virtually, you'll be treated just the same virtually as if you were in person. Based off of the attendance after the first couple office hours, we'll decide from there if we want to keep it in person or go fully virtual for that. But yes.
Is there a way that we can get like parking passes or anything? I think I pulled into like the wrong parking lot.
So parking lot C and CC, which is should have been the same lot you parked in for kickoff. It's labeled as the like the off-campus commuter. That's what I'm looking for. Commuter parking lot. If you're in C or CC, you should not have any issues. Yes.
You know how to set the map? It keeps taking me to the back of the building. And I'm like pulling into the very tight space and then trying to turn around and figure, I'm like, how am I?
So if instead of typing in Lemoyne, if you type in Lemoyne Campus Center, it will take you to almost that exact parking lot. Yeah, Lemoyne Campus Center is what you want to type in, or Lemoyne College Campus Center, and it should come right up.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Tonight is kind of like, you know, syllabus week. And if you have taken any college classes, this is very much about like orientation, making sure everyone is set up, making sure everyone is comfortable. We will be diving into a technical concept. We're going to do a brainstorming exercise the second half of class. But you've probably already heard a lot from me. I just wanted to give you a little bit about my background because last cohort, I went the full almost the full course, and people had like no idea what my background was. So my name is Max Matthews. I grew up in Ocean City, New Jersey, South New Jersey. I went to SU for a couple years and studied at their iSchool. So IT and information technology. You would think that that is a related field. Turns out it's not. We took one programming class in the entire 4-year curriculum. So I recognized that there were a lot of problems around me that I wanted to solve. I had that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. And I just saw a lot of inefficiencies that could be solved with technology. So I could not stand the fact that whenever we picked up a package in the dorms, they had literally an 11 by 17 sheet on a clipboard, and they were handwriting down like the 20-digit tracking number. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I said, what happens if someone loses a page of that? And they're like, oh yeah, we're screwed. We don't know what to do. And so I thought, all right, I want to fix that, right? So I said, I want to have an app that they can scan the barcode, it will detect the mailbox number, and it will send the student a notification that their package is ready for pickup. So I went about building a mobile app. I had no idea how to do that. I learned all about Objective-C, which is an older iOS programming language, did all of that and realized that, oh, I don't know everything. I need a database to go store all this information in. So I went out and I learned SQL, which is a very popular database language, querying language. And I learned all of that. And I'm like, it's great. I'm going to put a database in my mobile app. And the world said, no, you need to learn a server-side programming language. And so I went out and I learned PHP. And I went through that whole self-taught experience. And I finally got to the end of it. And I kept on hearing people say full stack. And I'm like, what is full stack? That is what you guys are here for. In the next 6 months, you are going to learn every piece of what we call a technology stack. And in the second half of class, we'll be going over a brainstorming exercise so you can just get everything out of your head, whether you know no programming languages and no tools, or whether you've been swimming in all of these acronyms and have no idea what they all stand for or how they all work. We're going to brainstorm that together and give you guys a foundation so that when you guys walk out of here at day 1, you've got an idea of what you just got yourselves into and what you're going to be learning. So that's coming down the pipeline. I did 3 years at SU. And my friend connected me with a local entrepreneur who had just started up a company. The company name is Tuzag. I came in there as a junior developer with just a little internship experience. And 7 years later, I've now hired a team. We have 4 engineers on our team. Company has 10 employees. We are actively hiring right now. I literally had an interview this morning with a candidate. So we have grown the company. We've got about $500,000 in revenue at this point. But I have been through the trenches. I have been self-taught and I have worked my way up. I've learned what it's like to learn without a mentor. I have learned what it's like to grow a team. I have learned all of the hard skills through enterprise. And up until now, I still work at Tuzag. So I split my time about 50-50. I teach, and then I also work at Tuzag. I take all of that industry experience and I dump it right into our curriculum. You'll find a lot of outdated curriculums out there that started teaching Java in the 80s and they're still teaching it to this day. That's not the case here. We are constantly modifying and updating our curriculum. So it is not just about learning what the local employers need. We talk to local employers through Hack Upstate and our partners at Center State and Erie 21 constantly. We just worked with the Syracuse Surge program to get an apprenticeship program off the ground. And we're continuing to work with them to make sure the timing aligns for the end of this boot camp so that you'll have the opportunities as well. Some employers involved in that, TCG Player, Terraheat, Talus. We've talked to Upstate Medical. One of our graduates just landed a position at Lockheed Martin, pending a background check. These are all employers that I have already talked to and confirmed our curriculum overlays with them. So That is what you're getting into in this boot camp, is something that is super up to date, and something that we are extremely flexible on, right? In a second, I'm going to show you around Canvas, and I'm going to show you the 30-second feedback form. It is completely anonymous. You can put your name on it if you want, but it's required that you submit that at least once a week. We want to hear from you, and you are going to have feedback that you probably don't want to say to my face, and that's okay. We still want to hear it. This program, it is intense, and it is going to go by so quickly that you've got to voice that feedback. And we read that every single night. This isn't the little comment box that's, locked in the corner. And then at the end of the cohort, we open it up and realize that we did something wrong, for a couple months. We read that feedback form every single night. So I'm going to show you guys how to get to that and a couple other important links in a minute. Any questions on any of that? Yeah.
So on my end.
Yes.
For the course, for the Canvas, I don't see anything that you see. Is that specific to yours only?
So if I switch over to the student view, I'm able to see what you guys can see. And you should have pages over here on the left. I just enabled that though, so you might need to refresh the page.
Okay.
Laura had that all posted, but the pages wasn't enabled yet, so I just turned that on. Still nothing? Take a quick look. Oh, if you hit the menu in the top left, sorry, you're fine. The back. There we go.
Oh.
So if you can't see these links over on the side, there's like a little menu bar icon up here. And if you click that, it hides it or pops it back open. Okay. So let me go back to my outline. Okay, so grading wise, we have a grading rubric, and it is not your traditional A, B, C, D. You get a 3, a 2, or a 1 for any assignment that you turn in. When you get a 2, and I actually have to update this, this is actually a B. If you get a 2, you are doing everything right. You do not need to worry about getting a 3. Don't feel like you got a 2 and you're like, oh my God, I did something wrong. A 2 is meeting expectations. Very rarely will you get a 3. You'll get a 3 if you are like, man, this assignment is so much fun. I want to do some additional styling on it. Or like, oh, I'm really in the groove here. I want to add a couple more features. Or when you go above and beyond on an assignment, you'll get a 3. Otherwise, if you're getting a 2 and you get a 2 throughout this entire cohort on all your assignments, on all of your quizzes, you are going to be golden. 2 is meeting expectations. So this is not a boot camp where you can kind of fly under the radar. We monitor everyone. So once you start slipping a week, okay, maybe it's a week, right? It's not the end of the world. It's okay to turn in an assignment late. There is no penalty for turning in an assignment late, but that 2 weeks, we're still like, ooh, we're starting to get worried about you. I'm going to reach out, or Jason is going to reach out, and we're going to get in touch with you and go, hey, what can we do to keep you going? So I'd like to touch on this rubric a little bit because everyone likes to get the highest grade possible, right? And I just like to point out that a 3 is like exceeding expectations. A 2 is completely on par. So if you go into Canvas and you're like, oh my God, I've got a 60 or a 70%, I'm going to panic. That's okay. Don't worry about the percentage number. If you continue to get 2s, you're doing great in the program. Give me 1 second. My CPU is like maxed out and I have no idea why. Never seen my computer do that. Okay, we will track attendance in a minute. I will take attendance for the whole class. Normally, we don't worry about that because we're virtual and we can just pull whoever signed into Zoom. If you have a Zoom account already and your name is not on it, please make sure that your display name is set to your actual name. If you plan on being late for class, just shoot me a Slack message, and I'm going to go over Slack in a moment if you've never used it. It's no big deal if you're late, if you have to miss a class, no big deal. Just shoot me a message. We'll mark you as excused. But we do track attendance, and that is also tied, I believe, to the stipends as well. So if you miss a couple classes in a row, you may not be fully eligible for the stipend. So just shoot me a message. We'll mark you as excused, but just like to touch on attendance is important. And we will be kicking off right at like 5:35, right? We only have 3 hours of class, and we got to take like a 30-minute break for dinner in there somewhere, right? So we kick off right at 5:35, shoot for being there at 5:30. I will normally be there at 5:30. I'm around to answer questions. The format of class is really simple. We kick off with what we call a stand-up, and that's an industry standard. What did you do yesterday? What are we doing today? And do you have any roadblocks or concerns? So we start this as an open conversation at the beginning of every class. Let's rehash what we learned yesterday. Let's just bring up those principles. Let's share our light bulb moments with each other, because we are going to need to celebrate victories to survive this 6 months. So when you're in class and you're sitting there for 20 minutes and you're like, I've got no idea what he's talking about, and I say that one word and you're like, I got it, I understand it, right? That's what we want to share at Stand Up. You are going to have frustrations, and it is a roller coaster ride, right? Laura said that at kickoff. The lows are lower when you're programming, but the highs are also higher, and celebrating those victories, super, super important. So at the beginning of every class, it's an open brainstorm, whether we're in person or virtual. You're just going to come off mute and just shout something out. What did we learn yesterday? What connected? What sunk in? Okay, what are we learning today? What's the roadmap? What are we about to go over? And then we open it up for any roadblocks, right? Any just generic questions. I will also pull in the 30-second feedback form at that point and say, hey, here are some things that we identified yesterday that got submitted that we're going to touch on today. We use a very structured system here because you're about to go through, I think it's 94 days of classes, minus a couple holidays in there. But we are going to be working on so much, you are going to get lost in your own files. So we've got everything coded down by week, day, and assignment number. So when you see W5D3, that means week 5, day 3. That all correlates to a schedule that you can get to from Canvas. So if you are in the Canvas class, you can get to it from the home page, or you can also scroll down to the modules and pop it open from there. This is the link to the Zoom classroom. That is the link that we are going to start using on Monday. If any of you guys aren't in Canvas yet, don't panic. By the time you get out the door, we're going to make sure your computer is all set up, so that tomorrow we can dive into Mac basics and getting a little bit more familiar and comfortable with your Mac if you aren't already. This schedule and YouTube links looks like a very boring spreadsheet, but it is going to be your lifeline for finding things. So this has a link to the outline that I will do every day. There will be 94 outlines by the end of this class that cover everything that we're going over. I will also, at the end of every class, around 9:30, 10 o'clock, you'll notice that the YouTube link pops up in here, and there will also be a transcript. That is an AI-generated transcript of everything, so that at the end of class, when you're like, oh, when did he start talking about that? You can literally just search through the transcript, and it will give you the exact timestamp. You can click on it, and it will start playing the audio right from that point. We found literally from the first cohort that students found that reliving class was super, super helpful for them. And so that's why we're very thorough about recording everything and having transcripts for everything. If it's not up the night of class, it goes up that very next morning. And we make sure that we have all of that accessible. This schedule will show you not only all of the week numbers, it also has all of the days broken down in here. So obviously Tuesday's day 2, Wednesday day 3, all of that stuff. And then up across the top, we've got all of the module names. We don't number the modules, but you get a good idea of where we're headed, right? So this week's all about the big picture. Then we go into HTML, which is how we code out the front end, HTML and CSS. We move into DevOps, developer operations. How do we deploy things? How do we get things out on the internet? How do we buy a domain name and get that linked up to actually show our web page? From there, we go into JavaScript. JavaScript is all about taking our websites and making them interactive, right? That's what takes a website and makes it a web app. From there, we go into APIs, application programming interfaces. Ryan comes in on this. I can actually take off those crossed fingers because I did confirm he is going to be here. Ryan has been with us since cohort 1. He's going to teach you all about how to use other people's data, how to request the data, get the response back, and interact with that and get the data to show up. It's a great New York Times bestsellers list, and you basically get all this live data coming in that you integrate into your own site. From there, we go into React. We get a week of React, and then we take a week off, right, for winter break. So the last week of the year, we will take off. It is technically a 25-week program because we take that week off. So you get 24 weeks of instruction. But if you count it out on the calendar, it is technically 25 weeks. We do another 2 weeks of React. And at this point, you're begging for mercy normally. You're like, my God, we've had so many projects. We've learned so much. Just give me a minute to catch up on all of this. So the project and review week is week 16. That's a chance for you to get caught up on any homework assignments, take any weekly quizzes, just dive in and catch up. This is one of the only weeks that you will have nothing due, no homework assignments, no quizzes. This is all about catch up. From there, we go into kind of getting more full stacky. We leave the boundaries of the front end and start working with the database. We learn SQL or SQL. We get into how we structure our data, how we organize and plan for our data. And then we get to my personal fun part, full stack. So we get into Node.js. This is all about how do we build our own APIs? How do we start connecting to the database and having data flow from the front end to the back end to the database and all the way in a loop? Then we come back. Nathan Evans comes back for DevOps part 2. That full stack week is split in half. So day 1 and day 2 will be full stack. Day 3 and day 4 will be DevOps. Then we get into Lara's career module. And then finally, the last week is all about capstone. So don't worry about your capstones. I know we mentioned that at kickoff. We'll do a much deeper dive onto that in week 5. We want to get you guys in the code and excited about what we're building before we get to your capstone project and start stressing you out about that. But your capstone is the ultimate culmination of everything that you have learned over this period. And it's kind of what we celebrate, right, at your graduation. So we've had a lot of great capstone projects, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself there. We will be coming back to the capstone in a couple weeks. Does anyone have any questions about the schedule or logistics? This spreadsheet, I'm telling you right now, you're going to want to bookmark it or just know that you can get to it from Canvas in the module section. We've got everything linked up there. Okay. Daily feedback form. This is a very basic form. It asks you for your name. It is not a required field. If you would like to submit this form anonymously, you are more than welcome to. If we don't have your name, obviously we can't reach out if there's a problem. It is truly anonymous. So if you would like a follow-up on whatever you're submitting, put your name on it. If you're not comfortable doing that, that's completely fine. We ask a simple 1 through 5. How well are you getting these concepts, right? Are you cruising through? Are you just so excited to learn? Or did you get to the end of class and be like, he lost me 4 minutes in and I just sat here for 3 hours? That happens, right? Hopefully you're comfortable enough to raise your hand and be like, I'm still completely lost. But this form, just how well did you understand it? How would you rank the teacher from a 1 to 5? And then how was the speed of class? Were you sitting here and you're like, oh my God, he couldn't be going any slower? Or are you like out of breath and you're like, please slow down, he's going so fast? And then finally, what's the notes? All of these are optional questions and you can just throw in a couple sentences here. You can throw in just a single word, whatever you want. This feedback form, I'm telling you, your TAs are going to be saying over and over and over again, fill out the form, fill out the form, fill out the form, because this is the way for you to guide your education while you are getting it. Yes.
Where was that located in?
Yeah. So in Canvas, if you go over to the modules, there should be the links right up at the top. Yes.
Okay, but
Yes.
when I click on it from the link in the email,
Yep.
it'll go right to it. I'm already logged in.
Yep.
But when I go to Canvas, instructor.com.
Yep.
It says to sign in and I'm not able to get anywhere.
Okay, so if you click on the link from the email, it should have up at the top, like you have been invited to join this course. If you click the accept the invite link, you should be able to hit create account from there.
You've been invited to participate free for teacher,
Yep.
role student and all of this. It says get started. That's it.
So
Good. Get right to the dashboard and it's already logged in. No, I know, but I'm trying to figure out, like, when I close this page, because there's no app, how do I get back to it?
we're doing this differently next time. Not you, and a lot of people have this problem. I just don't understand why there isn't a.
Then, if I were to go to this by itself, I can't. log in.
All right.
I didn't even want to click one down.
Yeah, let me play with it and get back to you guys on that.
Okay.
And then finally, the last thing I just want to touch on is all of our Calendly links are here. Do not wait until the very end of the program and then realize that you've had one-on-ones available to you this whole time. The same way that you booked your interviews to get through this program, you can get to a lot of our calendars straight through Calendly, right? You can go in here. I'm going to use my link as an example. You can pick your time. 25 minutes or 55 minutes. The reason why it's not a full half hour is because I take a lot of notes and also post that recording in that last 5 minutes of the meeting. So you can grab a 25-minute meeting. You will see my availability pop up. Most of the time, I even have time slots open on weekends. You pick whatever date that works for you. You pick the time that works. You hit confirm. Fill out a quick form. You have the option of choosing whether or not you want the meeting recorded. Some people love that. Some people hate it. That only gets sent to you. No one else has access to that recording. It's not posted publicly. That just gets sent direct to you. You can grab whatever time slot you want with us and go from there. I've had some people show up and just have questions about what's in the news and want to chat about that. I've had people show up and say, I really want to work on this homework assignment that I'm stuck on. It really doesn't matter, whatever you want to do. If you feel like you need some extra support, you can go in and you can see we've got Calendly links for not only a lot of the instructors and the Hack Upstate staff, but also for the TAs down here. So you're going to be meeting TAs throughout the whole program. Shantina is our TA for this week. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to make it to class today, but she'll be here tomorrow. Helping us out in person, and the TA is also listed out on the schedule. So if you ever have any questions about that, You can always reach out to them. All of our TAs have different expertise, but you may latch on to me and be like, Max is the one I learned the best from. That's what I want. Or you may be like, I need to hear this from someone else. I need a different perspective. All of our TAs are graduates of the program. They have gone through and learned everything that you are learning. So they have literally walked in your shoes. So definitely take advantage of those one-on-ones. Okay, taking a moment there. Does anyone, other than access issues to Canvas itself, does anyone have questions about the basic links in here? Yes. It's a web app. So it's just a link that you click on, and then you can fill out the form right in your browser. You don't have to download it or set up an account.
Your personal calendar? Like,
Yes. Yes.
oh, how do you do that?
So I link it with my calendar so you can see my availability, but when you book, it will send you an email with a link to add it directly to your calendar.
Awesome.
So after you book, and there's also a reminder for a text message if you want. It doesn't matter to me, but some people like a text right before the meeting and reminder to show up, that kind of thing. We bored out of our minds yet?
No.
Okay. Okay. Let me blow through the rest of this stuff, and then I will circle back to Zoom, VS Code, Slack, and Canvas, make sure everyone is comfortable on this at the end of class. Note-taking and sharing. This is not, you're not going to graduate top of the class here. This is not a competitive classroom, right? This is all about sharing. So when you guys find a resource that is helping you, go in Slack and post it. When you you take a bunch of notes and you say, hey, these are just some notes that I've taken, share them with the class. We do not care, right? This is a collaborative environment. When you find resources or whatever, or take your own notes that are helpful, share them with the class. That is totally fine with us. The other thing that I want to note is that we will do a lot of project-based learning, and you are going to feel pressure to code along with me. And I will take breaks as I am coding and give everyone kind of a chance to catch up, get those couple lines done, all of that stuff. You will be in the routine of that by week 3, right? Because week 2 is always a little hard. We're getting used to the Mac. We're writing some of our first lines of code. Week 3, you're settling into it. You're getting used to the live share that I do. You're getting into the rhythm of class. Don't get lulled into that sense of, I have to code along to understand this. There are some people who will do much better in class by just watching and just pulling out a notebook and just jotting down notes as we go. Some of our best coders don't code along with me. They just take that experience in throughout class, and then after class, they pull out their notes and they try and do it on their own. There is nothing wrong with that. Everyone learns a little differently, and don't try it both ways. Try and code along with me, see how that's going. When you're hitting that point where you're like, I'm writing what he's writing, you're doing it wrong. The point of following along with me and coding along with me is not just so that you can write the code, it's that you need to understand why we're doing that code. It's not even what code we're writing, it's why are we writing it. This Careers in Code Bootcamp trains you to be an engineer more than it trains you to be a developer, because we are going to break down every single project into engineering steps. The hardest part of any project is always getting started. So every project, we're going to do a little bit of planning, and we're going to identify step by step what we need to accomplish before we try and accomplish it. That is a hard skill to learn. And if you learn better by experiencing that for the first time and then trying to do it later, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. You're not going to get to the end of the class and have me standing by the door waiting for you to turn in an assignment. That will never be the case, right? Do not feel like you need to code along. Most of the homework assignments won't even be what we worked on in class. So the point of the homework assignments is to take what you learned through the projects and apply it. And that's why we're checking for comprehension. So I think if you interviewed all the previous cohorts, that's one thing that they will tell you from the beginning that we probably haven't been as clear about, is that it is okay to not code along when we do get to that. And that will start happening next week. Week 2, day 1, we're gonna pop open VS Code. We're gonna go through setting up a live share so you can see my code as I'm writing it. And we're gonna start building web pages starting on Monday, next Monday. So I just like to touch on that of do not feel the obligation to code along. Slack, Canvas, and then Stack Brainstorming. Yes.
I was actually just wondering, how do we access VS Code? Because I remember you mentioned it during last meeting when I was rewatching the YouTube video.
Yep.
I couldn't really figure out where to download it or access it.
Sure. So let me just share my screen. So this is part of the recording. So if you just go to Google and do a search for VS Code, you can do this in Safari or Chrome. If you don't have Chrome installed, probably a good idea to do that, but we won't need it right out of the gate. If you click on this VS Code link, the big blue button should say Download Mac Universal. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. It's going to start the download down here on the bottom as a zip file. Open it up. And one thing I will mention, let me see how VS Code does this. Or it's going to take my internet forever to download that. One thing to mention on the Mac, if you go through an installer and you keep on hitting continue, it's going to get the actual application installed. However, there are some applications that just give you an icon, and you double click on the icon and you think, okay, it's installed. I'm using it. It's great. That's not actually installed. You just opened it from your downloads folder, and that can cause all kinds of headaches. So if this download ever finishes, what you'll need to do is once that download is finished, and again, this does not apply to like Zoom, which I know has the installer, you will need to take that VS Code icon and drag it into your applications folder. And that is the proper way to install an application on the Mac. Wow, this download is really taking forever. Okay, so if you look in my downloads folder, you're going to see this thing that just says like Visual Studio Code. Mine says 3 because I've downloaded it before, but you pop it open here and you give it a minute and say open, and it's going to open itself right up. And you think, great, I'm good to go. It's installed. Wrong. What you need to do is take VS Code 3 and drag it over to your applications folder, and that's what will actually install it for you. We'll go through kind of Mac setup and all of that stuff towards the end of class to make sure that everyone's comfortable, can get into Canvas, has a sign in and a password and all of that stuff. We'll do that towards the end of class. Okay, let me go over Slack, and then we will take a break for so we shoot for like 7 to 7:20 is usually our break time. I'm usually pretty good about remembering that. Like 7:05 rolls around and I'm not slowing down at all. Someone raise your hand and be like, Max, please, we need a break, because I probably lost track of the time. But we normally shoot 7 to 7:20 for breaks, even on virtual classes as well. Okay, so Slack, quick orientation. If you have never used Slack before, Slack is broken down into 2 pieces. Slack is a workplace messaging application. You have channels, which are like group text messages, and then you have direct messages as well. You can see I'm in quite a few channels. I've been involved with Hack Upstate for almost its entire existence, but I've got a lot of channels over there on the left. You should have at least 2. You should have the CIC live stream and the CIC student C4 channel. If you do not have those, come see me at the end of class. We'll make sure that you either get your Slack account created or we get you added to those channels so that you can see them. Channels are very specific, right? So the CIC live stream C4, that's where I'm going to be dumping links in the middle of class. So when you see me and I share something, I'm going to dump it into that live stream channel. The CIC student C4 is more meant to be a messaging thing, right? That's going to say, hey, I found this great resource. You guys should check it out. Or, hey, anyone want to set up a study group, this Friday evening, hoping to work on these things, whatever it is, you can share that. Then there is a third channel that is called the CIC back channel that has no TAs and no instructors in it. We can't see it. I literally couldn't get into it if I tried. That is meant for you guys to complain or share just with each other, right? This is a cohort. You're all going to be going through this together. You're going to want to lean on each other. I have no access to that. At no point can I gain access to that. That is for you guys to just chat and form a community together. With that said, if there is something going on in there and you're like, whoa, maybe Max should know about this, or maybe we need to modify our class curriculum a little bit, or whatever it is, use that daily feedback form. Feel free to throw in there, and you can submit it anonymously. Hey, a couple students are struggling with this concept. Can we spend a little bit more time on it tomorrow? That is completely fine. But we will also make sure that your Slack is set up properly tonight. So if you have any problems, we'll save the last couple minutes of class and get everyone set up. Down at the bottom, you will also have direct messages. Direct messages are exactly what they sound. So if you need to reach out to me, you can hit the little new message icon up at the top, do a search for Max, oh, I do show up. Surprised you can hit that, and this will pop up, and you can send whatever message that you need to me. Any questions about anything on Slack? The back channel another student will have to add you to it because Karen set it up for a couple guys, but already left it. So someone who is already in it will have to make sure you get added to that because we're literally locked out of it now.
The student C4?
The back channel. We'll figure that out at towards the end of class.
For those that I was able to add, C4, CIC students only.
Okay, so students only is the channel. Hopefully a couple of you are in it, and then we can add each other into it, or you guys can add each other into it. But we'll get that figured out. Okay, I just have one last thing to touch on. Thursday before class, so Thursday 5:30, there will be a five question quiz due. That will just be pretty generic. It will normally be multiple choice questions. That's due 5:30 on Thursday. You can take it at any point during the week, and you can resubmit it as many times as you would like. Keep in mind that you may not get the exact same questions. So we are building up question banks of comprehension. And if you get a 5 on it and you're like, ooh, this is fun, I want to answer more questions, you can retake it and resubmit it if you want. Quizzes due Thursday, 5:30. Homework assignments, which will normally be a project, will be due 11:59 Sunday night. However, no penalty for turning in things late. So we will give you feedback on both your quizzes and your homework assignments. No big deal if you're traveling over the weekend, you turn it in on Tuesday. It might take another day or two to get some feedback to you, but no big deal to turn things in late. We do have a student performance tracking spreadsheet. That's the magic of how we make sure none of you guys are falling behind, right? So we factor in your quiz score. We factor in your weekend project score. We will be doing 4 or 5 capstone check-ins through the course of the program. We factor that in. We factor in any one-on-ones that you may have had with a TA or me or Laura. We factor in any career coaching that may be going on. And then Jason also weighs in. We take all of those scores and we give you your weekly score. That's your 1, 2, or 3. If you're at a 2, you're crushing it, you're good to go. If you're at a 3, you're really good to go, you're high performing. If you're at that 1 and you get a couple 1s in a row, that's when we're going to reach out to you and not threaten you. We're going to give you more resources, right? We're going to say, how can we help? Here are the one-on-ones. What are you struggling with? How can we get you caught up on homework? Because life happens, right? That is okay. You are going to run in, this is a 6-month program, right? Things are bound to pop up. That is okay. And if you communicate that with us, we're going to make sure that we can help you every way, shape, and form. Yes. Yeah. The work it should get posted the Monday before class. If we have it available ready before then, it will just show up to you. And I'm glad you asked. There is one other piece of homework that is optional, and that's going to be your pre-reading assignments. So we're going to have links, and you should already be able to see them in Canvas. If you go to your modules, you'll see there's this week 1 pre-reading link. And right now there are 2 links in there, 2 different articles to read. These are optional, but the idea here is that if you read these on Saturday or Sunday before the week starts, you're going to have advanced exposure to the concepts. So you don't need to go through these readings and be like, have full mastery of them. The idea here is that we're just planting the seed. We're giving you the concepts so that when you come into class on Monday, you've got a jump start on using them in projects and kind of learning through the projects. Everyone learns differently. Some people learn from textbooks, and we've got a list of textbooks that we can recommend to you. Some people can't stand reading and just need to jump right into the code and learn hands-on. That's fine. Some people need the visual, right? They need to be able to draw out the diagram of what they're working on. That is okay. Everyone learns differently. And if you can kind of communicate that to me through the feedback form, we can make sure to get you access to those resources throughout the whole program as it's going on. But last piece of the homework. So you've got your quizzes due Thursday before class. You've got your weekly homework project due Sunday at 11:59. And then you have these pre-readings that are optional. If you were going through these and the second or third week in, you're like, I don't get any of this, but I get what we're doing in class, skip the pre-readings. You don't need to do that. But if you're struggling to keep up and maybe you get to Tuesday or Wednesday and you're like, I do not get this, like what is going on? Go back to the pre-readings, see if the pre-readings will help you. If they don't, message your fellow students. Say, hey, is anyone else struggling with this? Because they may have already found a resource that is helping them get through it. Yeah, so I don't have them posted yet. You can kind of see on my screen, we've got them all set up, but because I haven't published it yet, you guys don't have access to it yet. But that will show up either the Thursday or Friday before the week. And if not, definitely by the weekend. So because we've taught the course before, we have a lot of the resources set up. We just have to link them all into this cohort's course, which is why they're a little bit delayed in getting them up, but we'll have them all set up for you and at least a week or 2 in advance. Okay. It is break time. So let's take a 25-minute break. We'll be back at 7:20 and we'll do our brainstorming exercise. And then at 8 o'clock, we'll stop and work on getting all of your accounts set up and making sure you're comfortable on your laptop and battling Canvas to make sure that you've got a password to get in. Thanks, guys. See you in 25 minutes, 7:20, aim to be back here.
Hey, Matt.
Okay, so we're gonna shoot for doing this exercise now. We will wrap up at 8 o'clock. And I'll stick around, help make sure everyone's comfortable on getting into Slack, making sure you've got your Canvas set up, kind of all of that stuff. Tomorrow, we will touch on a little bit of practicing with Zoom, making sure you can share your screen, and doing basic window management on your Mac. And then the first day of virtual classes, week 2, day 1, we will go through working with your external monitor. So if you've never had an external monitor before, don't panic. On Monday, we'll go through setting that up, getting you in mirroring mode, making sure you can drag windows across, all of that kind of stuff. So we're going to kind of do a little bit of intro to Mac tomorrow, and then we'll finish that up on our first remote day. So making sure everyone's comfortable sharing their screen and all of that fun stuff. For now, we are going to do this brainstorming exercise. So I would like you guys to throw out any language or framework or programming tool or anything that you guys may have heard of, either from our curriculum, from your experience out in the real world, whatever it may be, just go ahead and start throwing them out, and I'm going to start listing them all out here. Full stack. What's that?
It's a learning site for,
Spell it.
coding. KONO. Coding Academy.
JavaScript,
Python.
web app, Python. All free code? Free code camp, or is it a different one? All free code? Oh, okay.
Yes, that's close.
You thinking of C++?
Maybe it's not.
C++ and also CSS. C#, sure. PHP.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ooh, no, just Java. Java and JavaScript, very different languages. That's a important lesson to learn early on, because you'll make yourself look like an idiot pretty quickly if you use them interchangeably. Java, JavaScript, 2 completely separate programming languages.
Say just the term framework.
Sure. No, we don't.
The spelling of the color is put up here.
Oh, I'll fix it in a second. Did we get SQL? I think we got, yep, we got it. Sure.
We consider Linux a language or no?
We can put it on the list.
And what if we don't know any of that language?
I would be surprised if anyone knew all of these languages,
Okay.
let alone some of them.
Wait a minute.
Anything else that you guys have heard of?
Yeah.
OS, sure. Kind of any term that's been thrown out there, you know the definition. If you don't know the definition, languages, operating systems, tools. Linux, API we have.
Software developer.
Sure.
Project manager.
Sure. Van? Trello? VS Code, sure.
Do you know how?
NetBeans, yeah. Anything else? Sure. R plus. Yeah. Okay, so what if I told you guys that out of the 40 items on the list that you just listed, almost all of them are going to break down into about 5 or 6 different categories. So in order to start breaking that down, we need to define what those categories are. So we're going to come up with a term list. We're going to start with where we normally start as a user in the front end. Does someone want to take a stab at defining what front end is?
The coding that the customer could actually see, what the consumer could actually view and interact.
Where do we use it? Or do we kind of, what do we build using front end code? That's the language we use. What's the output of the HTML? Websites. But front end doesn't just have to be websites. It could also be what else? How do we feel about the front end definition? Okay.
Will you be sharing this document?
Yeah, so in Canvas, if you go to, I'm in the wrong class, I'm going to do that 40 times. If you go to the development big picture down to the week 1, day 1 outline, everything for the day will be broken down in this outline, including a link to the frameworks, languages, tools, oh my. And if you pop that open, that will take you right to this spreadsheet. And yeah, you should be able to get access to it from there. Okay, if we got a front end, what's the opposite of front end? Someone take a stab.
All the coding done that is something that kind of thing.
So where do we like?
Just remember that there has to be efficiency as well as how it runs and how it communicates with other programs.
So where does our backend code run? Server. And what's the non-scary version of the server that the industry has pushed onto us? The cloud. That's right. You're all going to be your own cloud developers. Ooh. All right. Part of the back end, where we put our data, what is that broken down into? Where do we store data? Yep. And what's the point of a database? Other than obviously store data. We call it persistent storage because most of our storage in our apps, believe it or not, is not persistent, right? When you close that web page, all the data disappears. When you are working on your server and your server reboots, all of that data disappears. And so we use databases as persistent storage in order to keep our information long-term. Anything else to add to the database definition?
Go back. For everything.
Yeah. You actually do a lot of CRUD in the database. Create, read, update, and delete. And so you guys will be learning the 4 major database operations in the second half of the cohort of create, read, update, and delete. Okay, what are some other categories that we may have hit on that list already? Yep. And we can do languages as, let's say, a standard way of writing code in a method the computer can understand. What else other than languages? Sure. So training tools, repositories of knowledge built for people to learn. A couple others on the list that we identified.
Like stuff like Node, would that fall into a language or like middleware?
Ooh, good question. Let's wait until we get to that, but I don't think we have Node on the list. So let's make sure that gets added. Node, someone else?
Another term.
Yeah, if anyone had any pop up, I can add them.
Logical, like the and concepts.
We got if and up here. Let me just put like logic up here too. There are a couple more that we can touch on in the categories here. One that we touched on a little bit is operating systems. What's the job of an operating system? Yeah, make sure hardware and software intercommunicate. What allows us to build apps on top of core computer hardware. Touch on anything else? How about developer tools? Pieces of software that make it easier for developers to build their own software.
Are we defining that separately from like the actual development tools like interface and browsers?
That kind of all lumps together for developer tools. We could also do maybe we can say concepts. And a concept we can define as theories or definitions used throughout the development process. Any other categories you guys want to touch on? Frameworks, sure. What's a framework?
I would find it as like a streamlined way to build an application using a specific language.
Often has pre-built features. And we can say it's an abstraction layer to make more complicated features easier to use. Anything else? Might be a couple that pop up as we go through that list, but how are we feeling about this? Okay, so now we get to apply it. And if you notice up at the top, I've got more than one category here. So oftentimes these concepts, these terms, these names, whatever they are, can apply to multiple categories and they can be used to build multiple things. So full stack, I think, is pretty safe to say that that is a concept, right? And we can always go back over and look at that definition. Theories or definitions used throughout the development process, right? So full stack is kind of this concept that, hey, we've got a front end and we've got a back end, and when we use the two together, that is what we consider a full stack, because we can intermix pieces of the stack. And we're going to go over that in 1 second. Kikomoto. Oh, got it. Okay. What is that?
It's a training tool.
Yeah, that's it. Just a training tool, just like Code Academy is, and we got Free Code Camp down here. These are all resources that we can use to get trained. What is JavaScript? It is a language. Where is JavaScript used?
No.
In the browser, and the browser is our front end. But wait a second, we're going to learn Node.js. JS is JavaScript. The little sucker is used in the back end as well. All right, keep that in mind. Seems like a pretty handy language. Maybe we want to learn that one. What's a web app?
Application optimized web.
I think we can say it's both a front end and a back end. And I think we could also, let me move those over and say that's a concept as well, because a web app, the difference between a web app and a website is a website is static information. It's just served to you. There's no way to interact with it. So a very basic website would be the New York Times, right? When we go to the NewYorkTimes.com, it's just there. There's nothing we can do with that article. It's just static information. What would make the New York Times a web app is when all of a sudden you can comment on that. Well, if you want to comment on that, we got to store that information somewhere. We got to have our server. Now, if we need to store that information, we also need the database as well. So now New York Times has become a full stack web app because it's got a server that is brokering the information between the database. So when we get started, we are going to be doing very basic HTML and CSS, your basic website. Then we learn JavaScript and we learn how to make that interactive. How do we make it so that when we're buying a movie ticket, we can click on the movie seats that we want? How do we make it so that data can be stored in our JavaScript code so that we can interact with the page? So once we get into JavaScript, we start crossing that line from website into web app. And that is not always a clearly defined line. And oftentimes, most websites that you're interacting with, you may not realize are web apps, but anything with that database and the server, anything with that interactive JavaScript, anything that's really data heavy, that's when you start crossing that line into a web app over a website. Python. Yep. Where is it used? It is not used in the front end. It is actually used in the back end if you're using it to build a web server or website. However, we did miss a class over here of desktop applications. Let's take a stab at what's a desktop application. You've all downloaded one in the past 72 hours. We could also say apps, let's call it programs, just to not use the word in the definition. Programs for desktops usually can run offline. Need to be installed. Okay, so Python can be used as a backend language. However, Python can also be used to create desktop applications. Free Code Camp is a training tool. C++. Yep. Where is it used? It can be used in the backend, and it can also be used to create desktop applications. Now, I don't want you to think that this is like a definitive list. It is possible to use a programming language in other areas as well, right? It may not be very common to use a particular language for a web server, but that doesn't mean that you can't do it. So this is not like the definitive list. This is just what the languages are most used for, or what categories they fit into best. Flask.
It's a framework.
It is a framework. And what do we build in Flask? The backend, Flask is a framework that is built using Python. So Python, great programming language, right? Very easy to learn. In fact, if we didn't teach JavaScript, Python is what we would be teaching. And oftentimes, a lot of our students will graduate from the program and move on to learning Python as their next programming language. All of the concepts that we're teaching you are directly translatable, right? We're teaching you how to be an engineer. We're teaching you computer science fundamentals, and we're teaching you how full stack applications work. Now, we can't teach that in a vacuum. We have to teach that using specific languages and frameworks and tools. However, all of that knowledge you can take and directly apply somewhere else. So just because we're teaching you React doesn't mean you can't go out and get a job using Angular. Angular is the direct competitor to React, but still using the same concepts, right? We still have data. We still need to get it to display on the page. We still need to be able to interact with it. So just because we are going through and identifying our stack in a minute, I don't want you to think that we are pigeonholing you into one area. Oftentimes, our graduates come out of this program, and it is very hard to find an exact stack match of what we teach versus what an employer is going to use. Part of that imposter syndrome is building yourself out of that and saying, hey, I am learning these concepts and I can take those concepts and directly apply them elsewhere. CSS. Language, where do we use it? Yep. CSS is a cascading style sheet. Style sheet is exactly what it sounds like. It styles our HTML and makes things show up the way we want them to, makes it look pretty. C#. Where do we use it? Yep. C#, you may also see .NET. .NET is a language, is a framework, excuse me, that uses the C# language. And if that is also used to create backend apps. The reason why I highlight .NET is .NET, a lot of local employers use the .NET framework. And so when you learn C#, all of the tools and frameworks that you're learning in JavaScript could be directly applied using C# and the .NET framework. And again, a framework is just making it easier for us to interact with that language. PHP. It is a language. It is for the back end. Can be used to generate a front end, but it's a back-end language. Fun fact, PHP is a recursive acronym. The first P in PHP stands for PHP. It used to be personal home pages, which was the PHP, but then they built so much on top of PHP that it was personal home pages, and then they made the H and the P stand for something else. So there's a weird linguistic term for that, but weird fun fact for you. Yes,
So I think, what is legacy for?
sure. Let's put that on the bottom of the list so we don't forget about it. PHP was my first server-side programming language, and you know what they say, your first programming language always holds a special place in your heart, you know. I'm just kidding. All right, Lua.
Usually used for highly interactive things.
Mhm.
It's a language, but it's typically used for like video games or like highly interactive apps, stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's more front-end leaning. But yes, you're totally right. React.
Also, sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
to go with Lua, there's this app really for Macs called Cody, Codea. And it's a lot like Lua, but it just allows you CODE, yep. And it just allows you to change some of the stuff like colors, stuff like that. It just makes it a little bit more easier for them to get used to it.
So development tool,
Yes.
React. Yep. And React's a little weird. Where do we use it? It does use JavaScript.
Your front end and back end.
It is just for the front end. React runs in your web browser, so it runs all on the front end. The reason why React is a little weird is it's also got its own language that it uses. React is all built in JavaScript, but uses a syntax called JSX. When we get to React, React is interesting because it's like if HTML and JavaScript had a baby. Any code that you write in React, it kind of blurs the line between your HTML and your JavaScript. So while React is definitely a framework by its definition, because React uses its own syntax, I do like to kind of flag it as a language. Even though it is built in JavaScript and JavaScript is the actual language that executes the code and all of that stuff, because it has its own syntax, I do like to kind of blur the line a little bit there and call it a language as well. HTML. It's a language and it's used in the front end. Yes. So people with a stick up their butts like to say that it's not a programming language. It is technically a markup language. In other words, it is just formatting your content. And because it's just marking up, basically wrapping your content in coding tags, people say it's not a programming language because you don't really execute the code. It just renders the code. I think that's personally horseshit. I think HTML and CSS are all on the journey to learning how to program. And if you use HTML and CSS and pump out websites for your entire career, you could say that you are a website developer and technically you wouldn't be programming, but you can't exist in a vacuum anymore. So even if you're just learning HTML and CSS, you're going to learn JavaScript. You're going to have more job demands on you than just that HTML and CSS. So yeah, some people would not call HTML a programming language because it's technically markup, but I don't like to get into the weeds on that. Ruby. What do we pump out using Ruby? Backend, and we can also do desktop apps using Ruby. Ruby is one of the few programming languages that comes pre-installed on your Mac. A lot of Mac tools are built on top of Ruby. SQL. It's a language. SQL is a language. Standard query language or structured query language, although standard is what I hear more. It is used in the backend because it's part of the database. Anyone hear of any SQL variations? Any products that come to mind for databases? MongoDB, although Mongo is in the backend, it's for the database. Mongo is one of the only databases that does not use SQL. It is literally called a NoSQL database or a non-relational database. Mongo is.
You like Postgres?
Yeah, Postgres, great. We will be learning Postgres. That is the database that we will use. That is a database. And technically in the back end as well. API, anyone know what it stands for? Application Programming Interface. An API is what allows our front end to talk to our back end or our back ends to talk to each other. Basically, it is the standard that we use for different computer applications to interface with each other, which is why it's called an application programming interface. We build APIs in the back end, and I would also label that as a concept. Developer tools. Well, I think that's kind of its own category over here. And so let me just make sure we define that. Yep. Oh, developer tools, pieces of software that make it easier for developers to build their own software. So because it's its own kind of category, I'm going to remove that one from the list. Java. Language. It is primarily used to build desktop applications, but it's also widely used to create backends as well. Java certainly can interact with a database. Most backend programming languages can interface with a database, but it is primarily used for desktop applications. And you know what? I'm even going to add one more here. Also used for mobile applications. Does anyone know the biggest user of Java in the world? Google. Every Android app in the App Store is made using Java. So Java is a super versatile language. It's been around for, I don't know, 40 years at this point. Speaking of oldie but goodies, Fortran. And it is used to build. You know, I hesitate to put desktop application on here because when Fortran came out, there wasn't a desktop. So yes, it is definitely used for desktop applications. Fortran was one of the first programming languages, not the first, but one of the first. Has been around for a while, and believe it or not, there are still applications that use Fortran. Every time you board a flight in this country, you can thank Fortran for getting you to where you are going. There are some applications that are running Fortran that they cannot shut down because they would have to shut down US airspace in order to replace them. So Fortran is pieces of the flight airspace infrastructure are still running on Fortran to this day. In fact, there was a huge demand for Fortran developers at the beginning of the pandemic because many states had not updated their unemployment software since it was written in Fortran. And so when unemployment spiked in the pandemic, all of a sudden there was a huge demand for Fortran developers because they had not updated since then. Good old mainframe code. Okay, Cobalt, another older language, still used primarily for desktop applications. It might be used for the back end. I'm not sure on that one. Frameworks, we already defined that one, just like we defined front end and back end. And did we define database? Okay, so we can kill all of those off the list. Shoot.
For Fortran, wouldn't it be in person from part of an operating system as well?
Ooh. Maybe when it got started, but not anymore. No, normally you execute your programming code. Like if you wanted to run Fortran code today, you wouldn't shut down your computer and restart it into an entirely different operating system. You would be able to run your Fortran code in Mac OS or Windows or whatever you were running. So maybe back in the day, it was closer to an operating system. But nowadays, if you wanted to execute your Fortran code, you would do that on top of it or inside of an operating system.
Mostly computation.
Yes,
If you,
yes,
I didn't know in aerospace, but the nuclear industry, so.
yes. It is, we just added legacy, right? There is certainly a demand for Fortran still in the market. It is some of, next to C code, it is some of the fastest executing code that you can run. But it has it's a lot harder as a developer to use it because a lot of tools that are built into modern programming languages are not built into older languages like Fortran. So things like when you declare a variable in Fortran, you literally have to go find the memory space and allocate it in the RAM before you can use that variable. Now that gives you a high level of control that you can control the memory, but most times because we have such powerful computers, we would prefer the language to do that kind of under the hood work for us. In Fortran, there really is no under the hood. You are writing and building from scratch. Feedback loops. It is a concept. It's a concept that you could use in the front end or back end. A feedback loop, I'm guessing this came up because of your interview question that probably most of you got. We use feedback loops every day, right? Feedback loops are not just a programming concept. I'm using a feedback loop right now. I'm talking, I'm looking at your guys' faces, I'm seeing nodding, and I'm going, okay, what I'm saying is sinking in, so I'm gonna keep going. But if I just saw you guys all staring out or, you know, spacing out, I'd be like, oh, maybe we need to hurry this up a little bit more, and I would change what I was doing. Feedback, yeah. Go for it.
Is there something about fast executing will be considered slow executing code? If that's a thing.
Any code that takes a while to run.
Like Python, you usually kind of gets the
Python gets the label sometimes, depending on how you write your JavaScript code. JavaScript can execute slower. The big answer on that is it depends. I've written some code that has taken literally 72 hours to execute, and I was thrilled that it happened in 3 days. Because when I first wrote the code, it took 2.5 weeks to run, and that wasn't acceptable for the business case, right? So 72 hours was considered fast executing code for that particular project or task. Our API, when we use with customers, we guarantee a 200 millisecond response time. So that's literally 1/5 of a second is 200 milliseconds. That is what I would consider fast running code for that. Sometimes with APIs, we expect 2 to 3 seconds before that data comes back. So it all is like, it depends. If you're breaking nuclear codes and you can break a nuclear code in a couple weeks, that's probably going to be considered fast running code, right? So it all just depends on what you're executing. Unix. It is an operating system. It can be used as a developer tool, and it kind of is a language because you can execute commands in the terminal, and you have to use certain syntax for that. So putting language label on that might be a little bit of a stretch. Operating system is definitely the most accurate term for Unix, but I'm gonna leave it there. OS we already defined over on the right, so I'm going to pull that out. But speaking of OSs, Linux is an operating system. Your Mac is based off of Unix and kind of based off of Linux as well. The vast majority of all web servers on the internet run off of a Linux code base. It's probably not something that you've interacted a ton with if you haven't done a lot of development yet. But the reason why you all have Macs in front of you are because they are based off of Linux, and Linux is the most developer-friendly operating system out there. Software developer. Call that a concept? Job title? let's just say job title there. Same for project manager. Kanban. What is Kanban or Kanban? It is it's more of a concept, but you can use that concept as a tool as a developer. So I'll give you a little wiggle room there. It is a project management concept, and we'll be touching on project management, if not tomorrow, definitely this week, of how important project management is in order to be a successful engineer. Trello is definitely a development tool. Trello is probably the biggest software tool specifically used for Kanban boards. And we are going to touch on Trello for sure this week. VS Code. Developer tool. That is the application or the program that we are going to be writing all of our code in. It's also known as a text editor, but definitely a developer tool. UI and UX. Concept. All right, NetBeans is a development tool. Just pop through these quickly. I'm going to call this if else concepts. Definitely a concept, logic, basically how we can tell the computer, if this thing is true, then I want you to do this code over here. If it's not true, else I want you to do this code over here. We'll definitely be touching on logic in JavaScript. The reason why it is called logic is because there is a mathematical field around logic, around if this is true and this is true and this is true, or if this thing is true, then we want this stuff to happen over here. One of the most boring classes I took in college is logic. Do not worry, you do not need to be good at logic to be a good developer. That is a concept. R plus language. Is R plus related to R? Yeah, so it's more data visualization. Yeah. Data visualization and analysis. I believe, I don't know R, but R and I believe Python often go hand in hand in terms of analyzing large data sets. Node. What does Node, where do we run Node code? On the server. So we're going to put it in the back end. It is kind of a language, even though it uses JavaScript. I'm going to put the full name here just so we know it's JavaScript. But Node is what allows us to run JavaScript in our backend. Just like we would have like a Python web server that would allow us to run our Python code, we also use Node to run our JavaScript code. Because JavaScript originated as a front-end language, they couldn't just take that and be like, okay, now use JavaScript in your backend. So Node was created in order to be able to write that JavaScript code and have it execute as a server on the backend. Finally, legacy code concept. So we just went through 40 different things, and we were able to break those 40 different things. Question?
No, another training tool would be Pluralsight.
Yep. Pluralsight. Did we get there's LinkedIn Learning, which is a great one, which used to be Lynda. And Code Academy made it on the list, so we're good there. What's that? One more time. Odin. And we're definitely going to have a lot of recommendations for you guys for readings and additional resources and all of that stuff. So I don't want you guys to think like when it gets hard, you're going to be on your own. we definitely support you with additional resources and try and factor in a bunch of different learning styles there. Okay, so long list of all of this stuff, right? But all of this stuff breaks down into these components that are interchangeable. So yes, we are learning React as a front-end framework, but you can take React and pull that piece out of the stack and put another puzzle piece back that is in that same category. So if we find anything else on this list that is another front-end framework, we can then modify a piece of our stack by pulling React out and putting Angular back in. Okay, we've identified several different back-end programming languages here. That means we could take Node out and plug Python in instead, or take Python out and plug Ruby in instead. Same for the database. We can take Postgres and take that out and put Mongo in its place. By identifying the categories, it's much easier to identify this long list of terms that you guys have heard about, or may know someone who programs in that, or have read job descriptions about it, or have been to a social meetup, or whatever it is. The goal of this exercise is to show you that there are a ton of terms out there, but when you break them down and know how that language or framework or whatever it is used, it makes it much easier to draw parallels to what you guys are going to be learning in the next 6 months. So I've got one more diagram for you in case you are a visual learner. Oh, that's not what I wanted. So we've got our front end, and this is exactly what we're going to be learning, right? The user experience, we've got our back end. That's where all the data happens, right? That's the cloud, that's the server. On the front end, we've got a web browser, and in the web browser like Chrome or Safari or Firefox, the web browser is going to be responsible for running our HTML, our CSS, our JavaScript, and our React code. That is the HTML is a markup language that is going to be controlled by CSS, or cascading style sheets. That is another language that we're going to use to style all of our HTML. And we're going to go into JavaScript, which is how do we make all of that code interactive. And then we learn React, which is how can we make that interactive more easily? How can we integrate data into our front end easier? On the back end, we are going to learn how to build an API server. We are going to be using Node.js and a framework called Express. Express is actually a direct competitor to Flask in terms of a framework making it easier to build APIs. And then finally, in our backend, we also have our database server. We're going to be learning Postgres, which is a SQL variant that uses that language. Finally, the web browser, all of the stuff on the left side there can't talk directly to the database server. And so the API server acts as our middleman. That's our broker that's controlling the flow of all of this data. We won't get to the right half of this screen for 17 weeks. The first 16 weeks, we were all focused on that front end, all about the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript, and the React. Then my personal fun part is when the back end gets involved and we start building our full stack applications. And then just the API connection and JSON is a syntax that we'll be learning in order to exchange data. That's all I have for you. I went 12 minutes over my time. I will warn you that I often teach right up until 8:30. I am pretty good about stopping at 8:30, so I don't hold anyone captive. But just be prepared for a full 5:30 to 8:30 classes most nights. And don't be afraid to remind me of the time when we hit that like 7 o'clock break or that 8:30 end of class time. Don't be afraid to let me know what time it is. Oh, can you do that, Karen? Oh.
They're not all, there's only 19 in one, so.
We have everyone. So you can just mark everyone present. Thank you. I'm gonna stick around and help everyone battle Canvas. If you don't have a username and password for Canvas yet, I am going to help you do that. What I'm gonna do is delete your existing account before you get too far into everything. Yeah,
I'm really fine.
you got it?
Yeah.
Good. I will stick around. Canvas, Slack, Zoom, and VS Code. And if you're feeling extra ambitious, you can also download Chrome and install Chrome if you haven't already. If not, no big deal. We'll get to that eventually. Same time and place tomorrow, 5:30 to 8:30. I'll be around for at least the next 15 minutes if anyone needs help or has questions. Thank you, guys. Have an awesome evening.
I don't think you can get it, but it looks like it's just, from what I hear, it's just a better module to like, change the colors, change the sizes within, different